Today on Dependency TV, we explore the topic of opioids from a medical professional who has first-hand knowledge on how these substances affect the body.
We also take an inside look into the daily operations at the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Center at Caura Hospital.
I am Dr. Winston Gopaul. I am a psychiatrist and head of the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Center at Caura Hospital. Well, in terms of the difference between narcotics and drugs, the two are often used interchangeably, but the term drug really refers to any substance that affects the metabolism of the human body in any way. The term psychoactive drug is a drug that affects the brain and the brain's chemistry, resulting in changes in perception, behavior, cognition. Often the term narcotic is referred to or used interchangeably with a psychoactive drug. So in the past, psychoactive drugs were referred to as narcotics, and to some degree they are still used interchangeably. Some authorities reserve the term narcotic for opiate drugs.
Even though there are many dangerous drugs available out there, crack cocaine is still accessible and sought after by many users, despite its harmful effects. The abuse of this substance often leads to jail, institution, or death, not necessarily in that order. Or it can turn you into a street dweller. It can be used in many ways: smoked, in black cigarettes, piped, in a Zush bottle, or other device, freebased, or injected. Most users get hooked from the first hit, which progresses to frequent use, dependence, and addiction. Most users will spend an entire salary on the drug while neglecting the needs of family, ignoring commitments like paying monthly bills, etc. This can eventually progress to selling of possessions, neglecting personal hygiene, committing crimes like petty theft, armed robberies, all in search of that first euphoric feeling.
So what are opioids? Opioids refer to that group of chemicals that are derived from the opium poppy. They are both natural and synthetic opioids. In terms of the natural opioids, they are opioids these are derived from the pod seed of the poppy plant, and they are not manufactured or altered in any way. Examples of these will include morphine and codeine, which we use regularly on a pharmaceutical basis, as well as heroin. There's also a natural opioid called sabine, which is manufactured and altered in the form of making semi-synthetic compounds such as oxycodone, hydromorphone, which are used for pain relief. There are also synthetic opioids, which would would be synthesized in a lab, and examples of these would include fentanyl, charmacet, as well as methadone. In the past, the term opiate was used to refer to all chemicals derived from the opium poppy, and the term opioid was used for all synthetic compounds, but they are both used interchangeably.
But WHO is a public health agency, a global public health agency that we're part of. So they advise we talk glibly about, wearing a mask, washing your hands and all the rest of it, keeping your physical distance, and if, how COVID-19 is spread, the fact that it's a virus, it's not bacteria, all of that sort of thing. That is because we have the knowledge and the evidence, and we are the ones that put together those guidelines.
So in terms of how opioids affect the body, we could divide the effect into an acute effect, which is the initial effect that the drug has on the body, and then the withdrawal effect, which is the effect that the person experiences when they have stopped using the drug. And we could even divide it into acute, which are the short-term medical effects, and the long-term chronic effects. So in terms of the initial acute effect that an individual who uses an opioid, of whatever, whether it's natural or synthetic, the initial effect will be one of an initial euphoria, rush, that happy feeling. Often people will describe a feeling of warmth over their body, and that's the initial effect. But within a short space of time, right, which depends on the duration of the drug effect and the individual, the person will begin to experience a sedative-like effect. So they will begin to feel drowsy. They may experience a feeling of an urge to sleep. In addition to the drowsiness, it also depresses your heart rate and your respiration, which is particularly dangerous, especially for people living in cold climates where they may fall asleep on the side of the road. And often you would have seen on TV people who inject heroin, for example, and in the movies they'll all be sleeping on wherever the drug then is. So those will be the immediate acute effects of opioids. In terms of the acute withdrawal effects, which is the effect that happens if someone has been using chronically and then stops suddenly, the effects vary, but the opioid withdrawal tends to be characterized by severe physical symptoms. So the most common physical symptom would be craving for the drug, right? Some people will experience sweating, right, and the hairs begin to stand on end, and that's often referred to as the cold turkey syndrome. This cold turkey phenomenon was actually initially described in opioids. Other people experience other acute effects such as gastrointestinal symptoms, meaning upset tummy, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal cramps. And that symptom is particularly difficult to control and often leads people to go back to use. In addition to that, some people will experience the increased sensitivity to pain or muscle pain, because opioids pharmacologically are used to treat pain. And one of the withdrawal symptoms is actually an increased sensitivity to pain. So often during withdrawal, people will experience painful symptoms as well. And these physical symptoms tend to make the individual crave the drug or seek it again as a way of relief. In terms of chronic drug use, there are chronic effects of opioids, which is a person who's been using over a protracted period of time. The effect will differ on the drug and the route of administration of the drug. For example, if someone is using injection drug use, which would be most commonly heroin, that drug, if injected, well, one of the big consequences is sharing of infections by passing needles from one person to the other. So a high risk of HIV, hepatitis B and C. That's why some countries have instituted needle exchange programs. If the drug is smoked, it can lead to increased risk of lung infections. And if it is snorted, it can lead to increased risk of nasal infections and in some cases perforation of the nasal septum.
There are certain truths in life, that nothing lasts forever, and no matter how challenging things seem now, it will all pass. That the world is full of endless possibilities, and all of life is precious. But we are all connected on this beautiful earth we share together, and everyone needs someone to be there for us when it matters most. No matter who we are or where we're from, one way, one world. Live easy with Guardian Group.
What are the short-term effects of crack cocaine? Crack cocaine causes a short-lived, intense high that is immediately followed by the opposite, intense depression, edginess, and a craving for more of the drug. People who use it often don't eat or sleep properly. They can experience greatly increased heart rate, muscle spasms, and convulsions. The drug can make people feel paranoid, angry, hostile, and anxious, even when they are not high. Regardless of how much of the drug is used or how frequently, crack cocaine increases the risk that the user will experience a heart attack, stroke, seizure, or respiratory failure, any of which can result in sudden death. Smoking crack further presents a series of health risks. Crack is often mixed with other substances that create toxic fumes when burned. As crack smoke does not remain potent for long, crack pipes are generally very short. This often causes cracked and blistered lips, known as crack lip, from users having a very hot pipe pressed against their lips.
Enjoy Simply More with a Digicel Prime Bundle. More data to listen more with D-Music. Watch more with PlayGo. Cheer more with SportsMax. Tune in more with Go Loud. Get 25 gigs plus dedicated LTE data for apps for 30 days for only $249. Dial *323# or visit the My Digicel app to buy. Digicel, better together.
So there are synthetic compounds, as I mentioned earlier, that would have an opiate-like effect, right? So these are actually not derived from the poppy plant, but they are synthesized in a laboratory. Some are used pharmacologically. So a common one that we would be familiar with and is available here is tramadol, which is used as a pain relief, as well as fentanyl, which is used in the induction of anesthesia and for pain relief. The one that most people will be familiar with will be a drug called methadone, which is used as an opioid replacement therapy. So those are examples of the synthetic opioids. They have the same pharmacologic effect on the brain as the naturally occurring opioids, and they are used more in a pharmacologic setting, but of course there is the potential for abuse, as all opioids are. So in terms of the signs and symptoms of opioid abuse, it would depend on the drug and the route of administration. So let's start with the most common one, which would be an oral route of administration. For example, if someone is using a cough syrup that contains opioids, such as a codeine-based cough syrup, or using an oral tablet like morphine or Methadone, if someone is using an oral opioid, what relatives or friends may observe is the acute intoxication effect, where the person might seem happy at 1 minute, but then they seem to want to sleep a lot. They would tend to be very withdrawn, that sedated, lethargic effect. They may experience slurred speech as well. One of the dangers of that, of course, is that because the drug slows your reflexes, your reaction time, your respiration, you're more prone to be involved in motor vehicular accidents, or even simple accidents as falling down the stairs if you're under the influence. Another thing in terms of one of the symptoms people may see is the drug craving behavior, meaning the drug seeking behavior in context of borrowing money to acquire it, whether it's to steal something. So you will normally see changes in behavior. If someone is using an injectable opioid, the most common effect would be what are called the needle tracks, where you'll see needle marks or scarring of veins, and in some cases there will be intense scarring of not just the veins but the tendons and muscles as well, as a result of overutilizing the veins for injections.
Some of us like to play games of chance, but remember, gaming should be fun, so don't get carried away. Play for a prize, but don't pay the price. Play for fun, but never for keeps. Play smart, but never play all. Winning isn't everything. If you or someone you know needs help, call our gambling addiction hotlines. Rebirth House 24-hour hotline 466-3146 or Serenity Place Empowerment Center for Women 794-7980. An initiative of NLCB and Eye on Dependency.
So in terms of the health consequences, we could, divide the health consequences into the physical components and the mental aspect. So in terms of the psychological or psychiatric effect, chronic opioid abuse could result in symptoms of depression, anxiety, insomnia, meaning difficulty initiating or maintaining sleep, as well as sexual dysfunction. So those would be more on the mental side of it. On the physical side, one of the biggest dangers of opioids is the potential for death due to overdose. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that opioids do suppress heart rate and respiration, and in so doing, it puts you at risk if you overdose of stopping the heart rate and blood pressure, which could result in death. There are other health consequences that could occur. Most commonly, as I mentioned earlier, it will be in response to the route of administration. So if you use injectable drug use, apart from sclerosing veins and making it difficult for any subsequent medical treatment, there will be the risk of sharing infections. If you smoke, there's an increased risk of lung complications, particularly infections, TB. Right? And if you snort it, there's an increased risk of nasal complications as well. So in terms of which populations are most at risk of opioid abuse, at least in our setting, there are certain groups of people that are more prone to opioid abuse. One being the younger age group, that 18 to 25-year-old age group, who would be more likely to participate in experimental drug use. And we've seen teenagers who have been experimenting, for example, with codeine, which is easily available. Codeine in combination with other sedatives such as benzodiazepines like Xanax, also known as alprazolam. And often they may mix codeine with Sprite, for example, and use that as a way of getting high. So that young age group is one age group. One subgroup that is prone to developing dependence on opioids. Another group are people with chronic pain syndrome. So these would be the maybe more elderly or younger persons. One subgroup we tend to see are people who have sickle cell disease, who have chronic pain due to their crises, and they would have experienced the initial euphoria from receiving an injectable painkiller, and often that might trigger some drug-seeking behavior. But of course, the difficulty is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the symptoms of opioid withdrawal is pain. So sometimes a person who has been exposed to opioids, who presents with pain, it's often difficult to say whether this pain is due to the withdrawal from the opioid or whether the person is actually experiencing pain. So we spoke about the young age group at being prone. We spoke about people with chronic pain syndromes, and the other group are healthcare providers, simply because they have access, or let's say more access than the regular person, to opioids. So those are basically the main subgroups that would be prone to substance use or opioid abuse.
Agricola Credit Union Cooperative Society Limited introduces its new and improved mortgage loan package from as low as 5% per annum. Home renovation, purchasing a home, constructing a home. Come to your credit union today. Speak to our friendly and courteous staff. See your dreams come true. All lending criteria apply. Check us at our head office, 20 Phillips Street, Port of Spain. Arima branch office, Pro Queen Street, Arima. Tobago office, Plymouth Road, Scarborough, Tobago. And our Marabella office, Pamela's Mall, Marabella. Agricola Credit Union, your very own, working for you.
So there are several rehabilitation centers at which one can access treatment. In terms of how one goes about accessing that treatment, most rehabs will have an assessment process, right, at which one can present. Some will offer a walk-in assessment. Some will be done on a specific day. For example, at Caura Hospital, assessments are done on a Thursday. A referral is not necessary, so someone who is suffering from any substance use disorder can seek treatment. In other rehabilitation centers as well, there is no need for a referral, right? You present your symptoms, and based on that, a decision will be made on the best course of management for that individual. It was mentioned that if someone is high or intoxicated, where do they go? Now, that an individual who is under the acute effect of the drug, right, is not at that time suitable candidate for rehabilitation. The initial stage of treatment is detoxification, where the individual will have to be kept off the drug, and the physical and psychological withdrawal symptoms have to be managed. Once that is stabilized, then the person is ready for the next stage of treatment, which is rehabilitation. Of course, this is provided that the individual is willing and motivated, because rehabilitation is a voluntary process. Often relatives would present and say, well, take in my family, right? But the person is so resistant, and it is often difficult to tell them that you cannot accept someone who is not willing to change, right? But part of the rehabilitation process is that the person has to be part of the process.
Now, what are the long-term effects of crack cocaine use. In addition to the usual risks associated with cocaine use, crack users may experience severe respiratory problems, including coughing, shortness of breath, lung damage, and bleeding. Long-term effects from use of crack cocaine include severe damage to the heart, liver, and kidneys. Users are more likely to have infectious diseases. Continued daily use causes sleep deprivation and loss of appetite, resulting in malnutrition. Smoking crack cocaine also can cause aggressive and paranoid behavior. As crack cocaine interferes with the way the brain processes chemicals, one needs more and more of the drug just to feel normal. Those who become addicted to crack cocaine lose interest in other areas of life. Coming down from the drug causes severe depression, which becomes deeper and deeper after each use. This can get so severe that a person will do almost anything to get the drug, even commit murder. And if he or she can't get crack cocaine, the depression can get so intense it can drive the addict to suicide.
Drug addiction does not start when you pop a pill or take a drink. Your home life, traumatic events, even your self-esteem all contribute to problems with drugs of abuse and, in many cases, addiction.
Join us next time for another informative edition of Dependency TV. The topic, teenage drug abuse.
See you then.